Hello, Johnny here, and today I'm going to be talking a bit about Underrail, an isometric RPG in the style of the classics of the 90s, which came out last month. Underrail is set in a not too distant future where the surface has become uninhabitable for humans who have taken shelter underground. Subterranean train stations have since emerged into separate nation-states who are all at peace for the moment, but make no mistake, are all vying for supremacy in what now passes as the last bastion of humanity. If that all sounds like Metro meets Fallout to you, yeah, you're not wrong. The premise is very Metro 2033, and it's impossible to look at the gameplay without being reminded of Fallout and Fallout 2. At this point, I have to admit I went into Underrail a little wary. While turn-based isometric RPGs like this often appeal to me, I rarely manage to play them for very long. It varies from game to game, but often between character creation, leveling up, and turn-based combat, I get an overwhelming sense I'm doing it wrong somehow. Like I'm somehow spoiling the experience for myself in a way I haven't managed to grasp since I don't get the game in the first place. Happily, that's not the same with Underrail for a couple of reasons. First, you get psionic powers really early, like immediately if you want them. I'm a big fan of psi powers thematically, but they also happen to be pretty powerful if you use them right. Now, I'm keen to stress the using them right bit in case any hardcore turn-based RPG fans think I'm calling Underrail easy, because it isn't. At all. The psi powers, however, do at least give you some welcome tactical options. More unusually though, and this is where things get really interesting, Underrail has a different system of leveling up. I know, an experience system that's more interesting than the power to generate and hurl ice shards at your enemies with your mind. It sounds like nonsense, but bear with me. In Underrail there are these things called oddities. They're a bunch of curios found scattered around the world in different locations, but they can also be dropped by some enemies. Some of them are functional, like old ID badges, others are bizarre, like deep-sea divers' helmets, while others are pretty grisly, like orders given to dead patrol members, or an interesting-looking ear you just tore off a dead rat hound. Apart from completing missions in Underrail, oddities are the only way you earn experience points, or, as is more often the case, experience point. Most oddities give you just 1 XP, which sounds stingy but makes more sense when you realise you're only looking for, say, 8 XP in order to reach a new rank. It's a frugal system for sure, but I actually found it really good for player motivation, particularly when it came to exploring Underrail's winding system of tunnels. Some missions, for instance, have a minimum completion requirement, but also give you scope to keep going and do a bit more. Now, in an RPG with a conventional system of XP gathering, I have to admit I'm sometimes prone to doing the bare minimum unless the quest has really grabbed me. I think part of that is down to me not really knowing how much XP is in it for me if I go the extra mile. 300, 175, 2... The numbers start to feel a bit meaningless, and it's hard to grasp how close the extra effort will get you to the next level. But because Underrail's oddities are physical objects in the world you have to go and find, and because each one of those is an easily defined chunk of your level, it encourages you to keep going. It makes XP more about the places you can get to and the objects you can find, rather than the feats you yourself have pulled off. My point is, traditional XP systems are like benevolent clouds that follow you around, showering rewards on you for doing a thing. You don't necessarily have to think about where you're going because you'll find XP wherever you go. The oddity system, meanwhile, waits for you to come to it. It rewards thoroughness and exploration, and that system, frankly, was enough to keep me going where I might have otherwise given up. If none of this sounds like your cup of tea, however, you can ditch the oddities and go for a more standard XP gathering system, which will reward you for killing enemies and using your skills. Both are valid playstyles, and naturally all roads lead to levelling up, which, at least early on during your time with Underrail, feels pretty generous. You get 40 skill points to spend each level, which at the beginning is loads. Look at this for instance. I want to pick this lock, but it's got a difficulty of 25 and I am woefully underleveled. Happily, I then immediately find an oddity which gives me enough experience to level up, so I can increase my lock picking manyfold, and there we go. In leveling up, you also get to pick a new feat. Feats are basically perks, and they can make a big difference. When I first started playing Underrail, for instance, absolutely everything was killing me, without difficulty. The old fear that somehow I was playing this game wrong started creeping in, until I realised if I engaged enemies from a greater distance, I could force them to use up most of their action points in getting close enough to attack me, allowing me to basically kite them across the map while attacking these enemies from a position of relative safety. The moment I picked up the sprint feat, that started working really well and gave me a much easier time in Underrail. So what have we learned? Well, I've learned I quite like isometric RPGs after all, and Underrail seems like a pretty good isometric RPG. But then it's not all about me. Let us know what you think in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing for plenty more from Eurogamer. Speaking of which...
I very deliberately wanted a word to name the game that I hope one day would actually be synonymous with the game. So if you sort of said Jenga, it would mean this game and nothing else.